Oh, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and if I could just say a personal thank you for last night, because I thought it was fantastic, and it's always good to be back at sea. We ran two versions of the Spark workshop, and the purpose of those workshops was to gain a peer review from the wider attendance of this conference, and by that I mean from the people who were not necessarily engaged closely in the project, to get a peer review, big house or small maps, of what they thought of the ACCSEAS programme. About 50 of you came in here in two packages yesterday afternoon and contributed in a very vigorous way, and thank you very much indeed for that. And several themes emerged. What we wanted to start with was a general overview, and then Jan Hendrik went in much more detail into the main concepts that have been presented to us over the last couple of days. So from the general overview point, there was an overwhelming view that the ACCSEAS programme had been hugely successful. I think that's centred particularly on the effectiveness of the 11 partners and the 6 nations that have been brought together around the North Sea basin to do work that a lot of people have talked about over the last couple of decades, but nobody has really done. And that was generally widely applauded, and everybody supported it. And we had a bit of a show of hands at the end, and that was scoring in the region of a median of about 7 to 8 out of 1 to 10 in terms of approval. So that was very, very encouraging. There were various other aspects that came out in that general oversight. First of all, an overwhelming view that something should be done with ACCSEAS. And those of you who were with us yesterday afternoon, remember I asked you to put up zaps on the wall here, saying what was the one thing you wanted done, and I would say that 50% of those zaps said something along the lines of ACCSEAS 2, son of ACCSEAS, next ACCSEAS, get on with it, do it, crack on, do something the mariner wants. Words to that effect. And that pretty much was an overview of the whole thing. I know that the programme ends in a week or so's time, but I can tell you that peer review wants the work to continue, which is extremely good. I think the second thing that came out was that the exploitation, if I could use a commercial sense, of some of the opportunities that have been identified by the ACCSEAS programme was again widely supported. Several people said they thought that there were various themes, and as I said, Jan Hendrik will comment on those, that need progressing in a commercial context, and sooner rather than later. But again, if I could use a commercial simile here, and we used it yesterday, we're now on the brink of what's in the UK is referred to as the valley of death, i.e. clever people have got together, they've come up with clever ideas, they then now hover on the edge of this valley of death. How are they going to be exploited? And that was the theme, the question that sort of hung in the air from yesterday. And there are several out there which I personally think are exploitable in fairly short order, and we probably need to wrap our minds around this with the project team as to what's to be done next. I think the final point I wanted to make in this, there's two final points. First of all, the resilient PNT theme came out very strongly. And I think that from a peer review point of view is extremely important. This was not just the people engaged in the project, this were people slightly a broader perspective perhaps, who really sparked on this need for resilient PNT, multi-source receivers, and really are far better described as a very accurate, very precise system of navigation and information flow, which would be supported by the maritime cloud, which Jan Hendrik will talk about. And the final point is what sort of roadshow is this team now going to put together? Is it just going to be a report that's going to sit on a shelf somewhere and gather dust? Or is there going to be a formal face-to-face reporting process to Interreg, to the EU, to national authorities, to other agencies? Are we going to look for conferences that we can take the ACCSEAS project to and describe what has happened? Should we go international with it? Should we go to Singapore? Should we go to Houston? Should we go and tell people about what's being done here? Because the North Sea region and the Baltic is a very advanced part of the world, some of the most sophisticated, complex sea space management systems in the world. We should be going out there and talking about it. So that was the general overview, general feedback from, as I say, this peer review approach. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, we did in the two workshops a kind of moderation process, and the point was to put on the walls all the 14 different candidate solutions, and people were invited to note on little cards ideas and proposals how to specifically progress those 14 candidate solutions out of ACCSEAS. And that was put together on the walls and then sorted into clusters. And the clusters, and each candidate solution could have had several clusters, and some had indeed several clusters, up to 4 or something. All of this was then voted on. So people voted on their assessment of priority. This should be given a specific cluster. And I'm now in a position to present you the top 10 of each of those workshop sessions, and that is interesting. It's first of all, it should be noted it's a flashlight image, so one group is different from another, but it produced interesting findings which support exactly what Nick just said. So for the workshop A1, I guess you see it on the screen behind me. Indeed, the R-mode testbed cluster received strong support, saying that it should be set up as a testbed, including several countries, and that a roadmap should be crafted for recognition eventually at IMO even. Second place was occupied by Maritime Cloud as an underlying technical framework, and continue to develop it. Make a body responsible with the goal to reduce diversity of communication means, but still maintaining existing radio communication systems. So there needs to be struck a balance between those two different desires. Then the WOCT was recognized as ready to implement, and also as a great potential to enhance search and rescue capabilities. Same level, technical exchange of intended routes, route topology model, innovative architecture of ship positioning. Again, here you see an example of another cluster of the same topic, which also gained support. Here, in this regard, the suggestion would have been, as opposed to the other one, to identify an organization who shall organize the multiple PNT systems. MSI&N earned several ranks. Augmented reality, as you can see. Harmonized data exchange employing IBIF was also considered important in its integration into ACCSEAS. The Maritime Cloud again. Cybersecurity was featuring prominently here, and of course another function of the WOCT in terms of distribution. Now, that was the workshop 1, and if you put on the other slide, please. The second run produced a slightly different result, which was interesting. The favorite candidate was the Maritime Cloud. Continue to develop Maritime Cloud as a fundamental infrastructure for seamless data communication with appropriate means. And again, it was requested that a dedicated working group, e.g. at IALA, should be created and should take on the task to promote this thing. The automated file reporting was considered a low-hanging fruit, and this should be developed and maintained, but it was also cautioned not to duplicate efforts. In the second run of this workshop, the augmented reality head-up display featured prominently among the first 3, and it was suggested that more prototypes are being developed to broaden the experience, and also that certain specifically mentioned technologies should be tried, such as head tracking, no-go area service, maritime service portfolios, tactical exchange of intended route. Again, resilient PNT. Here the focus was on Iran, as opposed to the R mode in the other group. Route topology model, the suggestion here would be to finalize it, so that's again another topic which is deemed almost complete in principle. The real-time vessel traffic pattern analysis and warning functionality for VTS, and again MSINN with the suggestion to replace nav tags and to produce international recommendation. So all of this you can see and read in the conference report. There was a photo documentation done, and this will be incorporated so you can see not only the top 10 but all the nice and very interesting ideas associated with the other candidate solutions, which are worthwhile to be considered, for example, when you are interested in a specific solution. So this will all be contained in the report of the conference, and so we had a great deal of ideas, and that report's next point was culminating in the desire or the suggestion to continue this kind of work, maybe with a different ACCSEAS 2 or different project or whatever is appropriate. So that is guidance from this conference on where to focus, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. Any observations to the results of the work group? Any surprise from the audience on the, well, both the top 10? It's of course interesting that they are, but if not, well, again, thank you very much, Nick and Hendrik, for not only your feedback, but for the arrangements and the methodological, well, logic of setting up this workshop.
Shall I do the report of work group C?
No, B is first.
Oh, B is first.
Yeah, that's the alphabet, you know. A, B.
Really?
Sorry, Peter, I know you're eager, but I thought I'd give you some time to retrieve your presentation. So you got it, but I give the floor to Stefan first to report back on workshop B.
Thank you. My colleague Michael Balhard elaborated on the theme of the monitoring navigator versus the monitoring the navigator. And few reactions from the audience was, and that was a very surprising reaction to me. There was one reaction that said, as long as everything is going all right, you should be able to do your thing, and as when things changes, the system should take over. That's a way of the machine that takes over. It's a bit contradictory to monitoring, or the monitoring navigator as the ultimate functioner in the system. Another reaction was that, and that's I think a real contribution to it, that fatigue is the real problem in lots of accidents. So monitoring the navigator might also be incorporated in monitoring the condition of the navigator. That's, to my mind, a very surprising and full conclusion. Further, there was a suggestion that systems should be transparent in their abilities and their possibilities. An example was mentioned that in airplanes, systems were sometimes limited in their abilities to react, and when pilots do not know that these limitations, they can't handle the plane in a proper order. So the transparency of the system should be fully developed. Further, Michael Baldauf elaborated on monitoring the navigator in a sense of what's already at hand, that's fleet operations control. So FOC, which is already being done at certain ferry lines, and that at first your reaction could be, well, that's something awkward of Big Brother watching you, but instead it's a collegial suggestion of how alternatives could be worked out. So instead of someone sitting somewhere in an office at headquarters of the company, it's a colleague sitting there and doing suggestions and maybe can support your decision making, which is a human-friendly approach of monitoring the navigator. And that's about the things we discussed in this working group B. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Any comments? Or are you satisfied with the comments that you provided during the workshop session? Are you happy with the wrap-up just given by Stefan? There's one.
Yeah, maybe if you compare the monitoring navigator with the monitoring navigator, I think if you have the monitoring navigator, you get some lot of alarms. That means that you get a lot of stress by saying that is not good, that is not good, that is not good. You compare it with the one, with the guy who's looking over his shoulder and helps in the solution. Brings in solutions instead of errors. And it might be a big change in how things are solved. So instead of troubles, you get solutions. And still you have the power to decide for yourself. But you get solutions. I think that's one of the big efforts that you can make with that.
Okay. So this was basically an observation, an additional comment, not so much a question, I think.
No, it was not a question.
No. Thank you very much. So we'll take note of that, but
Yeah.
if you want to comment, Stefan, from your point of view.
Well, I agree with this suggestion. It's a supervisory role that you have. That's, I think, what you mean. That someone is looking over your shoulder and gives you the possibilities, what you can do, instead of
it's an advisory role instead of,
Yep.
if it's a supervisory role, then you get the other one in power. But if you have
yeah.
someone who's helping you in deciding his knowledge,
Yeah,
that's a different point of view.
yeah, that's your point. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And we then turn to the next workshop on the future challenges for the North Sea region. Peter Paap, would you be so kind?
Yes, okay. Good morning, everyone. Okay. Apparently, when I hear the reports and the discussions, everyone had more or less the same subjects, but then from different angles. And our angle in Working Group C was to look at the IMO maritime service portfolios in the first place, and then the ACCSEAS candidate solutions, with the aim to prioritize the implementation of e-navigation services in the region. And in doing that, we provided a list of considerations to make up your mind, and what helped you to prioritize in 3 levels: a high level, a medium level, or a low level. You see here UNCLOS was mentioned, freedom of navigation, that was added by one of the participants, and it's truly so to do so. Okay, the first results is what we did is we counted the qualifications, and what you see on this one in here that the focus is specifically here on the VTS, and it is in one square block because there is coherency in those three topics, and develop them dividedly is not a good one. Maritime safety information scored high. Vessel shore reporting, more or less the FEL reporting, scored very high. And then a number of information providing services. Then we are going to the ACCSEAS candidate solutions, and then there are some differences with the report you just heard. We found out that the multi-source positioning service was absolutely the topic. It was not only the R mode, it was the combination ENAV, it was the multitasking receiver and R mode. Then you have the MSI. It's let's say the configuration of it is nearly there. It's now just finding the vehicle to transport it, and that is the reason why, for instance, maritime cloud is also high valued over here. I'll come back later with some small remarks. We also asked, do you have any other suggestion? And one of the suggestions is that a request to Ayala to full speed ahead with the development of the VHF data exchange system. That has to do with the fact that it is considered to be one of the major aspects also of the maritime cloud in the future. There was a suggestion for Wi-Fi and WiMAX networks. Both are, of course, broadband communication systems like also VDES, but they are both in the category solution enablers. Then there was the suggestion for route suggestion and advice service and the RCC information exchange service. So, the preliminary conclusions are, when you look at the IMO MSPs, that they all were safety related. The highest priorities are, and now I have to look at my own list, that is the VTS part, then number 5, maritime safety information, number 8, vessel shore reporting, number 16, real-time hydrographic and environmental information service, and 17, search and rescue. So that leaves at the end, in IMO terms, 5 outputs. When you go to the ACCSEAS candidate solutions, all safety of navigation related, it's not completely to the where two more or less in the direction of the efficiency. The highest priorities are getting number 1, 3 and 7. 1 is multi-source positioning service. 3 is the maritime safety information service. Then we have number 7, that is the automated fall reporting. Well, that is in line with what we heard during other conferences. And number 8 is the maritime cloud. Currently a low priority are numbers 5. Number 5 is the route topology model. Number 6, the augmented reality. Number 10, the dynamic predictor. And number 12, the real-time warning system based on historical AIS. There is an asterisk at number 5 because there were some comments that the motivations and the origin of the participants needed some more evaluation in respect to the aims of the RTM. It was not completely understood what direction it was hiding, so there is some work to do on that. And that is my conclusion.
Thank you very much, Peter. Any comments? There's one. Could you please take the microphone, because thanks, Alvin.
Thank you. Do you want a question or a comment?
Knowing you, it will be both.
I think it's important to justify the result from the ACCESS project and the maritime service portfolio for the region, and justify it into the IMO maritime service portfolios. Because if we want to develop something in the future that is based on the needs for the North Sea region, and we accept that the Chinese vessel will have a benefit or will use it, it has to be fundamented by IMO. Do you understand what I'm thinking? So we have to mitigate or justify our result with the IMO process. Thank you.
If you put it on the chair so it's available for others. Peter, did you hear the question mark or?
No, it was not so much a question mark. I only can respond to the following. From the beginning, when we started with ACCSEAS, we said we are going to at least try to stay within the boundaries and within the framework of the developments of IMO and AALA. I fully agree with the remark John Leon just said. It is now a matter of mapping. Where can we map the ACCSEAS solutions to the RFPs, and in order to give you some ease, John Leon, my colleague here, did a tremendous effort in mapping. We are going to provide you with more than 20 pages of mapping in all kinds of directions, so that there is a close connection also to the SIP, but also to other projects and developments.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Any other comments, observations from the floor at this stage? Things may certainly come back. Issues presented from feedback may certainly come back during the general debate we have later on. Okay, next, Christian Gruber, could I invite you to present the outcome of workshop D on simulating networks?
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to give you the highlights of the workshop D and a summary of what we have figured out, what we have learned from that workshop, which was held together with Professor Schmidt from the Flensburg University of Applied Sciences. And I want to thank first the auditorium that took part in that workshop for giving quite active discussion that showed me that there was indeed a lot of interest in the subject. And I want to summarize the topics we were talking about. Creating more realistic scenarios by incorporating remote distributed resources was one of the subjects covered by the question how network simulation can help in creating a more effective method and tool for testing and training. So we were giving a questionnaire afterwards, and we were asking the audience to take part in the discussion and to highlight what their opinion is about the topic. So we gave 4 possible answers from very good to minor, and thankfully there were 16 fully filled papers, and it shows that most of the participants thought that there is a very good or good impact regarding the reality of scenarios if you use a distributed simulation. But what does it mean if you want to cooperate in a remotely way by using resources with others across the network and to keep on cooperative mode? This already shows that there is not such a clear answer. There's still a highlight on a good impression, but you could also see that there are other, maybe more efficient ways of having a cooperative style of researching or testing and training. So network simulation might not be your first tool or method to do so. Is there a chance to save money on simulators by using resources on demand? Since there are only a few practical examples nowadays, since this kind of technology is still evolving, there hasn't been a clear picture for all of the participants, but mainly we could see that people see an option and an opportunity for that kind of technology in the near future. As for the test and access of interpersonal training or test effects, it's about the same picture. People really need to have practical examples to study this kind of methodology and technology. And the primary impact, but still is very good regarding the future of this technology. If you want to share your test and training experiences in large interdisciplinary teams, this is a way clearer picture now, since most of the audience is thinking this is a very good way of practicing this. The management of objectives is one of the main tasks we have to deal with when administering and managing a simulation network. And this is a very hard task to do, and a lot of people have a hard time getting this done. So this is already mirrored in the answers here, where you have quite difficult view on that topic. So this really needs training itself to get along with the management of objectives. The management of people, it's about the same. It's a quite tough task to do, and therefore the opinions vary a little bit, but there's still an impact on the positive side. But this totally changes when it comes to management of time. The audience got the idea that the management of time with the use of simulation networks is a really hard work to do, and it's tough, and it needs your attention all the time. And this is something I did highlight all the time in the workshop or during the workshop, and I think this is one of the major goals of this workshop, to come to a conclusion that time management and management of people is the thing that will get your attention most of the time, and this is a really hard work to do, and it will cost you a lot of patience to get along with that. But on the other hand, if you want to have a harmonized maritime simulation standard, this is definitely the way to go. As you can see, there has been no negative answer on that one, or no negative opinion on that one. So this is definitely seen as the way ahead for harmonized maritime simulation. And again, when it comes to the cost in proportion to the flexibility of the simulation, there is no clear picture yet, since there need experiences to be made with that technology, since it's quite complex and not everybody can imagine on what would be the real benefit and the real impact regarding efficiency. So what is the clear conclusion to the workshop D? The attendees of the workshop still remember my engineering staff, my minions, and as they already did say something before, an engineer might say, what's the conclusion? This is a mighty tool. I like simulation networks, and I can do that for you. So the technology side is not the problem. This can be done already, and there was no negative opinion on the technical side, so this is just things you have to do. And it's already at hand, the technology is at hand and can be done. But an ACCSEAS conference member now knows that it's more than technology you have to deal with. A clear test and training objective defines the means, persons, tools, and methods to reach it in an effective manner. So simulation networks can be one of these tools if you know its benefits, but you also have to consider its challenges regarding the management of objectives, people, and time. So the management and the administration of these three topics is much more difficult than the technology behind it. And I think this is the summary all the attendees of the workshop got and did agree upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian, for your comprehensive feedback. Any comments from the floor? So it's probably all very clear. Thank you very much. And well, I would thank the panelists not only for the feedback this morning, but certainly also for their great efforts in facilitating the workshops, doing the preparatory work, doing the wrap-up work. So it's has been quite a job. Thank you very much. Thank you. Give them a big hand.